welcome back to our tutorial. This is where we left off with this code. So now let's do it to all the entities in the world that we're in. Let's make it super cool, super fancy. So now you can define commands, and commands go through Skript. You can do lots of stuff with commands. So we're going to make a command called example. This is not an event, but it is a custom event where you can define commands. Lots of add-ons also take advantage of custom effects and stuff. There's just lots and lots of potential and possibilities in Skript. You just have to read their documentation in Wiki to figure out things and understand. You can also get help from the Unity Discord, from developers. You can message them if they're open to help, and lots more. So with a command, it always needs the word trigger, and trigger is basically what will execute this code. And I don't know if I went over this yet already, but this is a hashtag symbol, and in Skript it will ignore it. So you can put comments like apply levitation to Piggy. And this section will be ignored by Skript. It'll think it's a comment and it'll just ignore it. So you don't even have to worry about Skript erring. It's very helpful for working with collaboration, or if you're coding in a group or complex code parts, you can explain what certain parts of code do. So now we have this example. You can write permission, and it will make sure that the player executing the command has that permission. So let's say permission.example. This also surpasses operators. I think there's an is executable, which is either console or player. I think there's another one too, but I'm not sure. That makes sure that it's only executable by player or console. You can say permission message, and you don't need the quotations on this because it is a custom message. You can say you don't have permission, or you can put it with a red, very fancy red. We have allies. You type /e/ex or /examples. So basically, if you type /e, it does the same command. Ex, it does the same command. Examples, it does the same command. So now we have that set up. We need to do our trigger, which what happens when we execute this code. So we're going to loop, and loop is basically an expression of a list. So we can look over here on expressions, and we want entities. There we go. So you have all of the entities in a world, all of the entity types in a world, all of the entities around a location. So we're just going to use basic all entities in player's world. So when you have a command, you will always have a player or command console. Command sender is what it's called internally, but you can either say console or player, but we are going to be executing this command, so we can use player, and then we're going to grab our world. You can also use in world of player, and this is down here at the bottom. You have world, and there's the syntax world of location or entity. So loop all entities in our world, and then we're going to apply our effect to them. So now we have to change this victim to loop entity. Basically, loop entity means the looped entity from this loop. So this is going to go through this code, and it's going to grab all the entities and loop through this code, and each entity will be this element. So let's change the victim to loop entity on this. We can't have wait a second here, because if we have, for example, 100 entities and we go through this 100 times. It's going to stack up and it's going to be waiting 100 seconds. So our last entity in our list here of this expression will not have levitation until 100 seconds later, and that's not what we want. So what we can do to avoid that is make another loop, and you can also put spaces here to make your code nice and clean. You can put your comments there, looping and applying quotient. Right? So now we're gonna wait a second here. So all the entities are gonna get their levitation at the same time, and then we're gonna wait a second and not 100 seconds. So now we're gonna need to loop them all again, and now we can do a while loop, but let's just drop a diamond at their location to make things simpler. We don't need the broadcast because I was just using that to explain strings, and we don't need a wait second here as well. So now when we execute the command, if we have this permission, we can only run this command, but if we don't, it's going to say this and not execute the command. We have our allies, we can type /e instead of example, so it's nice and easy. Our trigger here is going to loop all the entities, apply levitation quick, wait a second, and then we're going to loop all the entities again, find out if they're not on the ground, and then drop a diamond at their location. So let's reload that and jump in game. So now let's spawn some piggies around us, and then type /e, and you'll see all entities in the world, even the ones in the far back, are getting levitated. Very nice, very fancy. So now we still have time, so let's go into some variables. Variables, yes, very fancy. We're gonna clear all this code and start from fresh. So let's make a teleportation script that teleports to the entity that we're looking at. Ooh, very fancy. So let's not do a command because we just went over commands. So let's do punch. You have two events here. We have on right click and on left click, which are right here. You have right click and left click. So let's, whoa, that's a big syntax. Let's do on right click or left click. We want a right click. So this is a very confusing syntax. Let's break it down. We want a right, or no, we want left, right? Yes, a left. We don't need the word mouse, so that can be removed. And we don't need the word ing, and we don't need all this. It's either a space or a hyphen. So let's just do on left click, and you can do on left click on a diamond, right? If we clicked our diamond that we picked up, and you can do holding the entity, yeah. You can also do on an entity, so say you walked up to a creeper and clicked it, you could detonate it, which would be cool if you're in creative, right? It's a nice trolling. But let's just do on left click, that's all we need, and let's set a local variable to our target entity. So a target entity, we have target entity here. It has entity type, and an entity type is, again, like a zombie, a creeper, a fireball, an arrow, anything of that nature. So our target entity is going to be whatever we're looking at. You can use of player to define if you want the player, the victim, or attacker, and this is a variable. When we put this underscore, that makes the variable local to this event only. So this variable is only present to this event. And that variables are like a database entry. you can set them to anything and then reference them later after a restart. But in our case, local variables, they're only present to the event. So once this event is finished, like once our code is done executing, it will delete this variable and forget about it. So now we don't need of player because Skript will automatically figure out that, oh, there's only one entity in this clicking event, and that is the player. So we're going to grab the target entity of the player. And now, let's say I was looking at grass. This would be set to nothing. So what we have to do is actually check it. So if entity is not set, stop running our code, right? So now all this below will only get executed if they have a target entity. So now let's make sure if entity is a pig, we need to make sure that it's a pig. So let's do is not a pig actually. So now this code will only work if we're looking at a pig. You can make it to if target entity is a pig as well, is not a pig, and stop it like that as well. But for this part of the tutorial, we're going to be doing variables, so this makes sense for a variable tutorial. So now we have our pig contained in this variable. So now what we want to do is set a global variable to the location of the entity. Location of our entity. So now we got to name our global variable. We can name it test. Let's just call it location actually. So we're going to set the variable named location to the location of our entity. And then we're also going to message the player, which is us. We're the one left clicking, and say location was set. Very nice. So now when we look at a pig and we left click, it's going to set our variable to that location of that pig and then message us. So now let's run a command saying teleport. Actually that'll conflict. You could, if you want, let's just call it piggy. Trigger. We're not going to need all that permission fancy stuff because this is just a tutorial and all we need is the trigger. So now let's see if location is set. So the variable must be set in order for our code to execute. And then if it is, we're going to teleport. This is another effect. You can teleport entities to a direction or location. So we're going to teleport the player, and the player is the person executing the command, to location. And location is the location of the entity that we set. So now teleport, or we're going to message saying that we teleported. You teleported to the piggy. Let's put our variable in a string. If you wanted to put it in a string, it's the same thing as an expression. You just put it in the percent signs inside your string and it will broadcast that location for you. Let's also put a message here saying the location of our piggy was not set to player. You don't have to define to player all the time either because there's only one person executing the command at the time of this event. So Skript will automatically tell the command sender, which is us. So let's restart our server, or I mean restart our script. So now let's summon our pig, and then let's left click looking at him. Boom! Location was set. If we look at a a sheep, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. So now let's type piggy, and then we teleported to where we clicked at the piggy. Kaboom! Teleport. Kaboom! Where's another pig? Is there a far off pig? Let's teleport to our piggy from here. Boom! Very nice. So that is a very basic example of using variables. So now let's start making this command very complex. Let's make it a boolean. A boolean is basically a true or false statement, and you can let's get into that in a second. So now this is a parameter of this command, and in the coding you can reference it as an argument. So if argument is true, we're going to run this. If it's false, you can do else statements and then another if statement. Argument is false, we're going to delete location. This basically will delete our variable from the database so it doesn't exist there anymore. This is very good management. Say if you are setting a lot of variables, you can use an event called onScript unload, and then you can also delete location. This will delete the location when the script is unloaded, when the server restarts or shuts down. This unload event will be called as well, and that variable will be deleted. That way we don't always have that variable persisting in our database. Alright, so now if we had multiple arguments, you can also put text, you can also put item type, you can also put time span, and you can also put like string, which is another word for text. You can put block, type, or player. But it's not going to be needed in this command at the moment. But let's say we did have player, or let's do text. This argument, you could do argument string, I think, or it might be string argument too. Or you can just do argument 1, or you can even shorten it to arg1, and then you can see it's green. Argument 1 works too. That's basically referencing the first one. You can say the second, and then you can say if it equals this. So some sort of text. Say we did a nickname, like nickname, and then a string. If the argument is LimeGlass, you could say you can't nickname yourself LimeGlass, and things like that. So we won't need that, and we're just going to use argument because we only have one argument. If you do have multiple arguments, you do have to define 1, 2, 3, 4, however many parameters you have. So now you can also make this optional, just like reading a syntax. You can add these into your command to make this boolean optional, which means if I type piggy, this argument will not be set. But you can also use an equals and then define it as false or true. This means that it will default to true, and this will be ran if we just type piggy without a true or false after it. So by this I mean if we type /piggy true, it would run this part, but if we type piggy false, it would run this part. And if we didn't run any true or false behind it, it would be true and it would run this. Very simple. So now let's also write a message saying location was deleted. And now let's also do a message here saying target entity was not a pig. And we can also say message, you're not looking at an entity. Very nice. So let's reload that and get in game and see our code in action. So now if we look at this sheep, you'll see the target was not a pig. If we look at this flower, it'll say we're not looking at an entity. But if we look at our piggy, it'll say location was set. So now let's type piggy false. Our location was deleted. And if we type piggy, you'll see the location of our piggy was not set. So now we can set the location and type piggy, and it will teleport to our piggy. Very nice. So that'll do it for this tutorial. In the next one, I will be going over functions and wrapping up the tutorial series. So hopefully we see that, and I'll see you guys then. So enjoy, and thanks for watching, and take care. Bye.